very warm welcome, Ajay. It's great to have you with us on the Valley of Words Literary Festival. And I have very few words to express my admiration for your latest book, which is In the Nick of Time. It's really, I must compliment you on a fantastic piece of work. Till now, 1947, 48 was basically there was an official history which everybody referred to, and that is a very good book by itself. But what you have succeeded in doing is absolutely marvelous. By way of introduction, Colonel Ajay Raina is a gunner who's also got a Sena Medal in Valley while serving with the RR. He has, since leaving the army, he has now written, I think, 9 books. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ajay. It's really a very, very important piece of work, if you ask me, because the whole crux of the Kashmir problem, actually, as we all know, originates to the early months of, in the immediate months after partition, especially in the month of October, when the uh, the raiders tried to force the issue in Kashmir. This, unfortunately, has not been documented enough. So, what actually prompted you, Ajay, to pick this as a subject? I know you're from Jammu. You're a Kashmiri also, so your links are there. But apart from that, this why this?
Firstly, thanks a lot for kind words. Sir, if you that couple of reasons I chose to do this work, sir, or rework on whatever was available. So it's long time. It's been event happened about 70 years back, so I had to rely on books. The two gaps which I found, sir, in literature. First was a major part of the fight, especially before Indian Army landed up in Srinagar on 27th of October. A major portion of fight was taken on by JAK forces, J&K state forces. Unfortunately, sir, if you read any mainstream literature book on this subject, written either by Indian Army officers or even most of foreign authors, there's hardly any mention because before Indian Army reached here, there was no communication, there was no record, nothing. So they were also not that equipped to comment on what happened before that. Fortunately, being a localite and then having access to archives here, I could find a few things which were probably not available to others. Uh, Second is a second part was that I found 1947-48, like you mentioned, sir, the official history of MOD, the war is beautifully written, but the 1200, 600 miles long frontier had so many segments, and every segment had a different story. Like Gilgit, Pakistan never entered, but Gilgit by itself went to Pakistan. So what I did,
Yeah.
I broke the segment into five geographical portions, and then I took a portion each with only aim that a justice should be done to whosoever played whatever part in the war. And like you said, sir, unless until the background of the issue, the historical part is not mentioned in the military history book, somehow I feel that reader, unless until he's got a parallel knowledge from somewhere else, he remains uninformed or probably not fully informed. So that's the reason I wanted to start. You would have seen, sir. I went into history a bit because undergrounds started long back. There were multiple issues, multiple interests. So that these two reasons basically compelled me to get into this book and sit down and write.
Well, one other book which captured everybody's imagination, another very well written book was Slender Was the Thread by Bogie Sen, who was commanding 161 Brigade, who you have covered very adequately in your book. Boogie makes a very keen comment in his book where he talks about visiting Badami Bagh after he's landed in. He replaced Brigadier Khatwat, I think, after he got shot in the leg. And then by the time he came there, I think it was the 3rd of November, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So
31st
he
he
then
landed.
31st he landed. I think 3rd of November he says he visited Badami Bagh. And he claims
Sir,
that the state troops were all in barracks. Why? Why do you think a thing like that? I mean, because that has influenced a lot of opinion about the Maharaja's forces, especially Hari Singh's. What were the orders? What actually happened? Whereas, actually, as per your book, And as per the record that even I'm aware of, these state forces fought extremely well. And in fact, they are the guys who really succeeded in holding up the Pakistani raiders.
In fact, reason I can't really fathom. I don't know. Many people outside military, of course, circles have tried to paint Maharaja Hari Singh in a different picture. Keeping that aside, back to your question, sir. General Sain's contention is doesn't stand the ground, sir. I mentioned my books also, and I also happen to meet first-hand witness later on who retired as Major General, sir, General Gordon Singh Jamal, who was under training in Badami Bagh that day. Having read records in the archives and having done staff checks, in army we keep doing staff checks, so we know how many battalions were there, what was the frontage, and where deployment. So if you look at the number of battalions available, sir, and you look at the places where they're deployed, in fact, many people feel, at least in some circles in J&K, that General Scott, actually Brigadier Scott that time, who was the chief of staff of J&K forces, he had created a situation where 9 Jack Reef was one only reserve battalion available in J&K state, which was not deployed. 4 was deployed in Domail, Muzaffarabad. 1 to 1 other were in Punch. So this was well-placed battalion, and had this battalion remained there, probably things would have been totally different, because they would have reacted very well in time. A scenario in Punch was so created, sir, that a threat in being was shown. Nobody was really murdered in Punch initially. No rapes were also committed initially. But there's so much of threat built up on locals there, the minorities, that they had to rush to Maharaja with the appeal, and they cried, our lives are in danger, ladies are in danger, and dignity is in danger. So 9 Jack Reef was plugged out of valley and sent to Punch. After that, there was nothing left. There are no troops other than what was available. One was company which was guarding Palace of Maharaja, which went along with Brigadier Rajendra Singh. There were a few officer cadets under training, sir. One of them being General Jamal. Those cadets were left out, but all the instructors were taken out. Even PT instructors, WT instructors, cooks. There was a line party of 7 Jack Reef sitting in Badami Bagh cantonment. They were also taken out. So there's no figures which can tally, and what General Sain is claiming in his book doesn't stand the ground, sir. As I've gone through in detail, and then there's another work by Major Verma Singh, sir. He belonged to state forces. Very detailed work is done, and he's again very categorically mentioned in his book that General Sain's 2 things he objects. One was this, sir. Second was a link up which happened with Punch under Brigadier Sain.
Yeah.
So as per his book, he went all the way to Punch, having crossed Hajipir Pass with Brigadier Pritam Singh in tow, that time Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh in tow, and then he said he did a lot of things to the local brigade commander there, Brigadier Krishna Singh, who was commanding Jack Forces Brigade in Punch. And he said, I gave him left, right, center, and then came back. The fact remains that while they were still away from Punch, the rear portion of General Sain's long convoy got ambushed near Uri, and he had to rush back.
I see.
So that part has been covered up very intelligently. So I'm sorry to say, but that showed to me that there's some kind of twisting the facts in General Sain's book, and I somehow don't agree with what he wrote. So
yeah, that's I'm glad you sort of addressing these issues, because that has colored a lot of things. The other thing which I think people are not really aware of is that the Valley had one raider column which actually came in, whereas there was a much higher quantum of raiders and the push from Pakistan, especially in the area between Mirpur and that entire Naushera, Rajouri, Punch wala jo sector hai. The fighting in that area, you have obviously studied it a lot. But especially maybe you'd like to comment a little bit on what actually happened in Mirpur, where I think there's one well where 400 women are supposed to have jumped in and died. I've actually gone and seen that. It's really quite a shocking thing. Elaborate on that a bit.
I actually belong to the area, so I'm technically non-Kashmiri that way, sir. I'm from that area. I'm from Bagh. My ancestors were from Bagh and Punch.
When I say Kashmiri, I mean, that's something which I think we should stop now thinking in terms of segments, but the whole. I mean, there's enough of this breaking things down. Yes.
Yes, sir. So it plays both ways. Sir, coming to Punch part, Punch, if you see, look at it in isolation, sir. Punch has always been in show window whenever somebody wanted to come and attack Kashmir. From times of Alexander, who fought with Porus on the banks of Jhelum next to Punch. So Punch has somehow been strategically very important. Now, when Pakistan was created, sir, the boundary between Punch region, Punch from by Punch I mean Punch, Mirpur, Bhimber, that whole frontier. Uh,
Yeah.
the boundary between J&K state and a new nation called Pakistan ran alongside Jhelum. So East Bank was with India and J&K, and West Bank was Pakistan. From that, Rawalpindi is just about 50 kilometers. So anybody with common sense will tell you, sir, that they could anticipate that with increase in kind of technical efficiency, technology of weaponry, one day, if Maharaja goes to Kashmir, India, and Indian army comes and sits in Punch alongside the Jhelum river, they can fire a RT gun into Rawalpindi. 50 kilometers today achievable actually. With RT guns, you don't have to fly planes. So, plus water security. On Mangala had only headwork, very small headwork built in 1912 by Britishers. And Pakistan's centricity with the water always, of course, that remains. Today, Mangala is more or less like a kind of a huge lake. It looks like ocean. You would have probably seen it, sir. So Punch was the underbelly of J&K. At the same time, Punch was required by Pakistan as a cushion, because if Pakistan could capture whole of Punch, Mirpur and come till the foothills of Pir Panjal range or come on top of passes like Haji Pir and Pir Gali, the Pakistan would have been secured for good. So Punch had that strategic importance. And like you said, sir, while 6 columns, that is 6,000 raiders came into Kashmir Valley, 10,000 came into Punch and Mirpur, and 7 infantry division of Pakistan was sitting behind them, with 1 infantry brigade sitting in Sialkot. So quantum of troops was almost double what came into Valley. Only thing which was not in favor of Punch and why it didn't get highlighted was first is Kashmir centricity, sir, which remains. Second is communication. Road communication was not developed, so one could not see that kind of caravan or convoy of 300 vehicles coming into Punch like it came in Muzaffarabad. So it got sidelined. As far as massacres are concerned, sir, it is heartbreaking. Even one guy dies or one female is molested, it is not, I mean, one cannot tolerate or be appreciative about it. But you compare this with Baramulla. Baramulla got into news because there was a Western who was in on honeymoon in Srinagar, and he got captured. He rushed to Srinagar, Baramulla along with one Sikh. When one Sikh column under Colonel Rai fell back, he was captured. And then he was given beating, and then for treatment he was sent to church. So he kept on posting his dispatches from there. Plus, attack on church became a very big issue that time. Whereas in Mirpur, sir, 20,000 is a figure which people with a lot of confidence and survivors, 20,000 people. And ladies, like you said, the RS Mars school where the girls, young girls, they jumped, and the warden was the last one to jump in that well. And then they were taken to Ali Beg Gurdwara, where it became like a concentration camp of World War II. Sir. And males were, or anybody above 9 years was simply eliminated slowly and slowly. Ladies were sold off in Peshawar. My own hometown, Rajouri, 13,000 people. People say 30, but I am taking a lower figure, 13,000 people slaughtered over 3 days. So there were so many tragedies happening that time. It was a difficult time, but somehow Punch got sidelined. Even today, nobody speaks about Punch. And interestingly, sir, we call it POK. They call it POK. We call it POJK. But actually, that area which is there in Pakistan is actually POJG. Technically, sir, it is Pakistan occupied Jammu, which is Mirpur, Rawalakot, Palandri, and Bagh. That is the Punch area. Bhimber to the south, and Gilgit. Kashmir, not even an inch, is under Pakistan occupation. Muzaffarabad was never considered part of Kashmir technically. So Kashmir used to finish at Baramulla. Thereafter, language changes, the custom changes. So these are the things which people just brush on the carpet. I have tried to bring out these in my series of books, and this attempt has been made, sir, to correct the history.
Are you saying Uri also was linguistically not considered a part of the valley, the Kashmir Valley? If
No,
you're
sir,
saying it terminated. Acha, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Now,
Kashmiri people historically, sir. Sorry,
no,
they've been referring to Kashmiri people, sir. If you go into the literature or even their history, anybody living across Shamsawari, that is whole of Kishan-Ganga Valley, now called Neelam Valley by Pakistan. So starting from Gurez till Muzaffarabad, were called
Right.
Par ke Log. They Par ke
Yes.
Log, sir.
Okay.
They are beyond that. And so was Uri. Uri is part of Punch, that way, the language, and they're very close to Punch cultures. Pothohari is the language, sir, actually, which binds the whole belt starting from Punch till Muzaffarabad and beyond.
Well, that's very
So,
interesting. That really is because and it makes sense also because they're linked with through Haji Pir along that side to Punch more than anything else.
yes,
Now,
yes.
one question I want to ask you, since you're from that area, the kind of brutality that we saw, in 1947, 40, which, as now you're doing great yeoman service by bringing it to the fore. What led to such kind of extreme brutality? I mean, after all, they are the same people, or at least on both sides of the border. What led to this? What motivated them? How could they suddenly just go berserk and just start raping and killing? It affected the Maharaja's forces also. I mean, it was unheard of, unthinkable. The officers never even dreamt that that was possible. So, just a quick
Sir,
take on that because.
sir, it didn't happen suddenly, sir. Actually, the whole campaign needs to be seen in two parts. When you talk of Kashmir and Jammu, Gilgit, of course, being a separate thing. In Kashmir, they attacked. Kashmiris never cooperated, so they came with people who were given that freedom, go Luto and plunder the place and take the females. So that's okay. In Punch, sir, like your question, which is actually applicable to our area where neighbors turned out on each other. This was is going for a couple of years before 1947. What had happened, sir, in World War II, Punch Mirpur region had contributed 60,000 soldiers to British Army to fight in World War II. Now, this was the highest number of soldiers contributed by any Indian princely state towards British effort. Now,
Okay.
I am from India, sir. I know these people are very hard nuts, very good soldiers. So British always in World War One and Two both. So when the World War Two ended, there were suddenly 60,000 men, young people, sir, from 20 to 40 years of age, that bracket, and they became unemployed. During World War Two, the post office in Mirpur had raised hands and requested postal authorities in Lahore to send additional staff because they couldn't handle the money orders. There were 60,000 money orders coming to Mirpur and Punch every day, sir, every month as salaries to those Jawans. And suddenly everything stopped. Now, when this partition thing was happening and already designs were there to cut India into two parts, so a subversion started in Punch. One big asset with Punch was the soldiers who were now unemployed. So that audience was targeted by Pakistan. And British had a policy that whosoever came to serve in British Army and thereafter those soldiers were delisted, that state was given special grants to look after that area, to develop that area that these soldiers find their bread comfortably thereafter. So Maharaja also got some money from British because it was the largest contribution, like I said, in terms of people, number of soldiers. So the rumor spread in Punch, and my own relatives, I mean, families heard it. They said the money has come to Maharaja. Their money is supposed to come to your pockets, and the money is not coming to your pockets. Same thing which happens today, sir. A special package is announced for Kashmir or for Northeast, and people expect कि मेरे जेब में कितना आएगा. Government is spending money or printing out money for development, but people feel it should come to my pocket. So that was one. Secondly, Punch was never a part of J&K, sir, technically. Initially, J&K, when Maharaja Ranjit Singh gave states to Maharaja Gulab Sujay Singh and Punch, there are three different states. Later on, of course, whatever happened in yes, sir. Yes, sir. So at some stage, Punch was taken in. So there was resentment. The taxes which were imposed by Maharaja on Punch, and I believe some of those taxes were actually very harsh. And tax on widows and window and horse, everything in Punch was taxable. So it is building up, sir. From March 47 onwards, it got a lot of momentum with Muslim conference cadres coming into Punch and Muslim League guys coming into Punch. Now these soldiers who had been delisted, so their colleagues were sitting across the border. They also been delisted, but they were part of Pakistan. So there was communication between soldiers of Punch and ex-soldiers of both were sitting in Pakistan, Punjab of Pakistan. So subversion was very complete. It was done gradually and cleverly, sir. And when the time came, you'll be interested to know, sir, when the call for jihad was given finally, and people were told to pick up weapons and go and kill Hindus and non-Muslims, there were many Muslim families. Sanity, of course, suddenly prevails everywhere. they migrated to Pakistan. And you know what was the reason, sir? Our neighbors were there, so my grandfather used to tell. They said, we are Muslims. Now call for jihad has come, so we should fight. But we find no reason to attack you guys. You are our neighbors for centuries. They say, okay,
Yeah.
now we're going across border. So when you go across border, jihad is not applicable. So we'll remain Muslim. So there were good people who did that, but there were many who fell for the trap, sir. And this is how things went out of hands.
Well, it's hard to believe that 20 minutes has just passed like that. And talking to you on this, I cannot uh, find adequate words to actually advocate that people really need to read your book. And not only this one, but also the other work that you're doing around the 1947-48 operations. Uh, Colonel, it's something I wish you all the very best in your endeavors, because this is one area which, as a military historian myself, I mean, this is one area where I felt that there is a lot that has not really bubbled out to the surface. What you are doing now in terms of bringing out exactly what happened with the state forces, what happened with the local population, etc., is absolutely fantastic. I wish you all the very best, and I just have one complaint. You please pass it on to your publisher. It's too highly
So,
priced. Bring it down a bit, because I think you will get the numbers. It's too good a work to isolate it with with the price bracket which you guys have actually gone for. I know the dynamics differ from publisher to publisher, but it's a book I cannot. Uh, I really have such wonderful words of praise for it, and I really wish you all the very best. Thank you so much, Colonel
thank
Raina, for being with us, and good luck with your future.
you, sir.